Rarely in Destiny have we seen such a striking weapon. With one of the most unique looks in the game, Red Death is simultaneously impressive and terrifying. It looks bloodthirsty, and it packs a hell of a kick. For a long while, this monstrous pulse rifle dominated the Crucible, and is often still considered one of the best PvE primary weapons you can possibly carry. While the reign of pulse rifles in the Crucible is now tenuous at best, due to the encroaching scout rifles, the Red Death can still dance with the best of them in the right hands. You just got to make sure you understand how much power you're holding, and that's where we come in. First, let's look at the base stats. With a rate of fire 66, Red Death is actually on the slower side of rate of fire for a pulse rifle, perfectly matching that of the exotic No Time to Explain, but slower than that of Bad Juju. However, with the triple shot burst Red Death delivers, this isn't really much of an issue, and a 66 is still pretty high by most gun standards. Definitely not something to sniff at. So one of the main issues when you're reading about pulse rifle stats is the impact always looks pretty pitiful. 14? For a pulse rifle? Most people would look at that and scoff, but then stop and truly think about it. In the hands of an accurate player, this weapon is amazing. Why? Well, impact is measured based on a single shot. Each burst of a pulse rifle fires 3. So instead, we're looking at a pretty intense amount of damage in a short time, with Red Death being a potential 2 to 3 burst kill. Typically, pulse rifles are the jack-of-all-trade guns, operating mostly at mid-range, but also on the upper end of close range, and the lower end of long range. Red Death is not so typical here. It has a range stat of 33, operating at the lower end with the same stat as Bad Juju, and trailing behind the 51 No Time to Explain. Once again, in the hands of an accurate player, the Red Death can excel beyond its lower range quite nicely. While low compared to its other exotic pulse rifle counterparts, Red Death's stability is still sitting pretty hefty at 51. The issue here is that with its lower range and stability, it can be difficult to handle at more extreme ranges, but it still gets the job done. Surprisingly, Red Death actually excels pretty nicely with its reload stat at 72, higher than both the Bad Juju and No Time to Explain. Of the 3 exotic pulse rifles, Red Death has the largest magazine at first glance. However, both No Time to Explain and Bad Juju have perks which add ammo back to their magazine, so this is a battle of attrition they would win in long term. Still, these 72 shots that Red Death can hold in a magazine are still pretty nasty for the unprepared. On paper, Red Death doesn't look like anything special, but thinking that way is utter folly. This weapon was incredibly dominant for a long time, and that's because it's far more accurate than the stats would have you believe, and it kicks like a nasty mule. Definitely a recommended weapon for the PvP arsenal, and its perks make it fantastic for PvE. Speaking of which, perk analysis. Red Death. Each kill heals you and speeds up reload. Now that is nasty. An incredibly valuable perk for both PvP and PvE. This is one of the reasons people love this gun. Win a PvP fight by the skin of your teeth? Boom, health back, faster reload, ready for the next victim. Getting overwhelmed by mobs in PvE? Score a kill and feel refreshed. It's truly a lifesaver and a death dealer. Between your first 2 options here, the difference is kinda moot. The majority would recommend aggressive ballistic. The increased impact is worth the slight penalty to range. However, this is all a matter of preference, especially considering that potentially Red Death can't afford to lose much range. Think of your own playstyle and react accordingly. A decidedly underrated perk, Unflinching, makes it easier to aim under fire, allowing you to maintain better accuracy in a firefight in both PvP and PvE. What this effectively means is that when you're getting shot while aiming down the sights, you find that getting hit doesn't cause your screen to shake up so badly. 3 very different perks here, for 3 very different things. Snapshot means you can aim faster, a reasonably valuable PvP perk, allowing you to get more accurate shots off quicker than your opponent. Still not particularly recommended though. High caliber rounds are basically the opposite of Unflinching. Firing them at an enemy makes it harder for them to aim, which can be handy if you get the shot in first. Single point sling lets you switch weapons faster and move quicker while aiming. If you're closing in on your enemy, you can switch to a shotgun faster. It also works well if you're the strafing type. Regardless, between these three, you'll have to make your own choice. It's all about playstyle. While Red Death is no longer quite the king of the Crucible it once was, it's still a force to be reckoned with, proving pretty versatile in many different ways. Sure, its range isn't amazing these days, but it makes up for it pretty well with impact. And its exotic perk makes it a boon in both PvP and PvE. It's because of this versatility that we give Red Death 4 Engrams out of 5. For more content like this and for all of your Destiny needs, be sure to head over to destinydb.com.